Hey guys, Stealth here. During the stream that I uploaded Monday, I was using a Czech Armor deck. Now, it wasn't finished, but with the help of Swiss, I did manage to do quite a bit of damage with it. And a couple of you requested the deck code. I cannot provide it because I simply deleted that deck, considering that it wasn't full yet, it wasn't done. So just to make sure that I wasn't going to accidentally use it again, I deleted the deck code. But as you requested it, here's a deck review or a deck building video of a Czech Armor deck. I would only consider this deck viable for something along the lines of 3v3, 4v4 or 10v10. Because if you're going to take it into a smaller match, you will find that you're going to miss some crucial elements and that those elements cannot be fulfilled with the help of teammates. Especially if you're taking this deck, for example, into a 1v1, you're going to see that your infantry is just not that good. And if you are playing a 1v1 map like Ones and Harbor, of course it's a terrible idea to bring armor. Even if you wanted to, you're going to be seriously handicapped in some elements. So the mission profile for this deck is, say, 3v3 and bigger. And that influences pretty much everything about it, because it means that we're going to be fighting on bigger maps, we're going to be using heavier units, and with our availability bonus, taking the T-72 M1K actually becomes viable. Now, you don't want these things at veteran, they are not supposed to be a frontline unit, but I suppose you could call them semi-frontline, because with your tanks you're going to be taking zones which are heavily contested. And that's exactly the point that this tank can fulfill. It has quite a bit of armor, it is very difficult to kill with an artillery strike, provided it's not an M270. So we're going to take 4 of these. I'm also going to take 2 cards of these helicopters, or actually, yeah, considering we're going to be fighting on bigger maps, let's take 2 of those and 1 Coloss. I might switch this up later, but I don't think we're going to have any long-range artillery anyway. Maybe the Pivonia as a long-range support, but not too sure yet. Infantry-wise, I want to have a holding force or infantry that's going to come in APCs or IFVs with autocannons, because that's something that tanks aren't really that good at. So I'm going to select infantry first. We can also select the fire support units, which grants us the Granatomets and the Panzerniovci. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. These guys are mostly RPG support teams, but unlike most RPG teams, they can actually use an HE damage, so they can also engage infantry groups. I don't think I've ever used these things, nor will I ever, because they're just not that good. It is nice that they can fire that RPG versus infantry and they have a very high accuracy, but I don't think I'm going to be needing them that bad. What I mostly want out of the infantry section is autocannons, and we get that on the Vidra 1 and the Vidra 2. I'm going to take the Vidra 2 because I found that the VK30 autocannon is a very, very nice addition for my forces. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to push through a town or push alongside a town with my tanks, push the Vidras through the town, offload the infantry, make sure I move up with the Vidras, and I have autocannons supporting my tanks. So I'm going to have, say, 16 of these guys. They're just the main holding force. I'm not going to create a infantry heavy deck around this armored phase, because it's just not what you get the veterancy bonuses for. I'm also going to take 1 card of Granatomets. I'm going to put those on hardened because I want them to be as effective as possible. And we're also going to need some AA, of course. AA's anti-aircraft. Unfortunately, your AA is not that good. You get the Strelith 2 for 5 points, and you can deploy a ton of those guys, 16. And it won't let me do that right now because I'm selecting the Vidra, and I only get 2 cards of those. So I'm going to have to switch back to the Vidra 1, which is a 15-point vehicle, but still carries an autocannon, so it's still moderately viable. I'm also considering something like the OT-62B, because these things have a, I think it's called a recoilless rifle on these things. How should I do this again? Like that. It's a recoilless rifle. It does not have the best accuracy, and considering it only has a 1 in 5 chance to hit, you're gonna face maybe 1 or 2 hits with this weapon. It only carries 8 rounds. but it only has to hit once or twice in order to do the damage in points that you are paying for this thing, which is 10. It also has a bit of HE. It's not got particularly great stats otherwise, but the recoilless rifle, the Tarasnice, is nice to have on this thing. So I'm going to take the Strela 3 because they have better stats for the infantry, as or in the OT62B, and take them at hardened. Now I can go for an anti-tank team, but you don't really get good options. You get the Concours M, or the Fagot. Fagot would not recommend it. Low accuracy. The only viable unit for me would be the Concours, but I'm going to try and not take one of these because they're going to cost me 2 points, and I want to spend those 2 points in the armored section, which makes sure that I get more units because I'm going to pay 2 points for 5 units, which is quite a lot. Whereas I can take, for example, in the tank section, 2 more tank cards with, for example, Dynas, which is going to grant me another 20 vehicles. So that's why I'm not going to go with any kind of ATGM infantry. Support-wise, we're going to have to focus on AA, and the Strop 1 is always one that I'm going to be using in this deck. It's a bit unfortunate we don't have access to the Strop 2, because this one is not as good. Accuracy-wise, it's okay, but it doesn't have radar guidance, which is both a blessing and a curse. Blessing, of course, no seed can get you, or can catch you, but you're going to sacrifice accuracy for it. So we're going to have to keep that in mind, and we're going to go with 10 of those, because I wanted to bunch them up in groups of 2. Next up is the S10M long range or moderately long range anti-helo platform. I'm going to get, let's say, 5 of those. And then I'm going to get some Cub M4s to make sure I can shoot down enemy aircraft which are threatening my tanks. Consider this thing a sort of stopping force for when you're dealing with a Thunderbolt or a Hornet. I do not want my high priced tanks sniped, so this thing is going to protect me. We're going to take 1 card of those. And then I'm going to take the Prem S. The Prem S is, well, it's not that good. It does have decent mobility for a tracked vehicle, 60 kph off-road. It does have a bit of armor. But what I do like about it is the range, dispersion, rate of fire, and the amount of rounds that it carries. 81 rounds means that you're not going to likely have to resupply this unit. So we're going to take 8 of those to make sure I can put up smoke screens in order to attack. Tank-wise, we're going to go from high-priced to low-priced. I want 3 Modernas in here. You can go with 1 Elite, but you're seriously gimping your deck that way, because this is the only super heavy that we're getting. So I have to only get 3 of them at Veteran. If you're going to take 1 at Elite, you're going to have to be very, very careful, because if you lose this one, you just lost your heaviest hitting tank, and the next thing down the line is only a T-72S. And I'm going to say only, but do not underestimate these things, because they are very, very significant on the battlefield. Especially if you compare them to the T-72 M1M. The M1M does not have the same frontal armor, it does not have the same armor penetration, and you will notice that as you're doing battle with these tanks. You're going to notice that they die faster because they're simply taking more damage, or that they may not even be able to penetrate the armor of the enemy tank if they're not using the sphere. What I'm going to be doing is taking 2 of these, and I want them at Elite. That gives me 8 Elite T-72Ss, and those are going to be my main shield around the Moderna. Moderna is going to be dishing out with the main gun. T-72Ss are going to try and absorb some of the hits to make sure that the Moderna won't take most of the hits. And they can also engage quite heavy targets with the sphere and their main gun. Next up, I want to have the T-72 M1M in here, just because it also has the main gun. It also has the sphere, but as mentioned, a little bit less armor and a little bit less armor penetration. The same goes for the T-72 1CZ or M1CZ. It's again a lesser version of the T-72 because you are going down the prices. So I'm going to take these guys, and I'm going to take 16 of those. That already puts me at 27 tanks, which is not likely to be something that you're going to use. If you are going to go through 27 tanks, you're doing something wrong. Or you're in a very, very long, drawn-out game where all of your tanks have run out. but that's unlikely because we're only halfway done here. I want something a bit cheaper, so I'm going to go with, let's see, the 65-point Dyna 1. I could go with the T-72. It does not have the best accuracy though, and you will notice that lack of accuracy. This one only has accuracy of 45% while standing still, or 30% with a stabilizer. Compare that to the Dyna and you're going to see that it is a bit better accuracy wise, but for 10 points less I will gain the Arcan, and it may not have as much armor, 13 versus 14, but the Arcan is a fast flying ATGM that does quite a bit of damage. And this puts me at an armor penetration of 21 with a 50% accuracy. So you might even consider turning off the main gun on this weapon or on this tank to make sure that it's only going to fire the Arcan. And with the Arcan you can do significant amount of damage. So I'm going to go with one card of Dyna 2s, Dyna 1s. I want to have 10 of those. Whatever you do, steer clear of the T-62. Do not use these tanks. If you see someone using them, they either are new players or they have no idea what they're doing. Usually both. These things are terrible. They have off-road speed of only 50. They have a rate of 6 rounds a minute rate of fire. Stabilizer is terrible. Accuracy is terrible. And they only got 10 frontal armor. Do not take the T-62. Tank that you can take is the T-72M or T-55s, depending on what you like. T-55s versus the T-72s carry an additional ATGM. They carry the Bastion, which is not quite the same quality as the Arcan. You're going to see less armor penetration and less accuracy, as well as having a bit less range. This one only has 2625 versus the Arcan's 2800. Now, the tank that I want to pick next is a bit of a support tank, something that I can either use as a forward force, I can block off flanks or clear forests. And I found this tank to be sufficient for that job. So I'm going to take 16 of these tanks, and now I'm suddenly sitting at 53 tanks, which should be more than enough. I may revisit this section depending on how I'm going to spend those additional points, but let's move on to Recon for now. Reconnaissance is, as with most decks, one of the most important sections. If you don't have your Recon sorted, you're going to be caught out in the open. You're going to be losing sight of targets, and your tanks, your armor, your infantry, none of it will have anything to shoot at. So never overlook your Recon section. What I want to use is this one. I'm going to take 2 cards. This is the Snezka. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. It has pretty good off-road speed, 65. It has exceptional optics, and we can get 2 of these since we have enough activation points in this deck. So I'm going to go with 2 of them at Hardened. Keep in mind, these things are not designed to take a hit. They only have 3 frontal armor. If you want something that can take a bit of a hit, go with T-55. And I will also put 1 card of T-55s in here to make sure that I have a bit of spotting capacity that can also take a hit. This is a tank that you can blend in amongst your main forces while still pushing up. This thing, you can try, but it's going to go down in 1 hit. And the autocannon on it is nice. It's the 2A42, which you may also see here on the Moderna, the 2A42. Good specs on the autocannon. It can engage helicopters and can engage infantry, but I want these guys mostly as passive spotters. They are pretty expensive for passive spotters, but they're also too expensive to get one shot. So it's a bit of a bad position, but you do need something with exceptional optics on the ground. And while actually this vehicle might be a better choice. Let's see, you're going to face the Grom and the Miljutka. Okay, I'm going to switch this around. I'm going to take 2 cards of the Svetava to make sure that I have cheaper reconnaissance vehicles, but I will try to disable the weapons on them, if I remember, to make sure that they don't give their position away and get themselves killed. These things do have even less armor at only 2, so these are absolutely one-shottable. Next up, I want to have a reconnaissance chopper. Mi2 is the only thing we're getting. Not exactly my first choice, because it's very slow and it doesn't have exceptional optics, which is something that I'm looking for in a reconnaissance helicopter. And the other unit that I want to have here is Reconnaissance Infantry. Normally I wouldn't really use this Reconnaissance Infantry if I'm using an armored deck. You may have seen me do it during the stream, and that's because these things have very good stealth, which the Svatavas don't have. They only got medium stealth, and same goes for the T-55 Recons. So I want to have something with exceptional stealth, and unfortunately we're also gonna get a free Mi-25 with that. Or actually, not so free, it's gonna cost us 55 points. You're paying 55 points for a pretty terrible helicopter. It only has the Yak-B Gatling gun, it has the S2M rocket pods, and it has the flight to ITGM, which is slow, low accuracy, decent armor penetration, but the range on it is only 2450. So you're going to be facing AA at that range usually, unless you find some sort of isolated target. Anyway, we're going to have to make do with these. Usually 5 is enough. If you're going to go into a long drawn out game, let's say something that has total destruction, no time limit, switch this back to 8 because you will need more reconnaissance infantry. Vehicle wise, we don't get a lot of options here. We only got the OT-810D, which is something that you should not underestimate. These little 15-point half tracks, I suppose you could call them, are very, very outdated. They're old. They're 1963 units, and you can get them for 15 points. But I found them to be effective flankers or flank defenders. Especially once you're dealing with infantry, these things can really quickly make work of those guys. Let's say you're facing an open area like Asgard, you want to try and sneak some vehicles or infantry across. Park a couple of these OT-810Bs in the flanks or in the wood line and watch them open up on the infantry. Accuracy may be pretty terrible at only 25, but they have an HE damage of 2 and a rate of fire of 10, so what they cannot hit they will make up for in rate of fire, and they're just pretty much throwaway units at 15 points. The Pram S is, I suppose you could say, the more assault geared version of the Pram, and it's also something that, how should you call this? I think they're going to call it a fire support vehicle. It has a bit of everything. It has a machine gun against infantry. It has a concourse against tanks. Concourse, of course, not being terribly effective at only 45% accuracy and 20 armor penetration. But what you could get this thing for is infantry fighting or anti-infantry fighting, because it does have 5 HE power on the main gun. And that's not bad. That's better than we have on the tanks, and that's because you're fighting with a 120mm gun. I wouldn't really call it that, considering the look of this thing. But it's a decent all-rounder. So I'm going to take 10 of those just because I have room in my deck. And then I want to take 10 napalm tanks to make sure I can flush out infantry from tree lines, forests or towns. Helicopter wise, your selection is quite awful. You got the Mi-4, which is just a pretty bad helicopter filled to the brim with these rocket pods. You can see them all the way out here. There seems to be a guy with a machine gun in here, although I would not rely on him. It only has 15% accuracy, and the chances of you actually hitting something with that machine gun are not good. If you're going to get these, get them for their rocket pods, because that is what they are pretty good with. Mi-35 is, I believe, the heaviest assault helicopter that you're going to get, as far as ATGMs go. The Mi-24 S-24 has a different mission profile. The Mi-35 is ATGM geared, or anti-vehicle geared. Still, we're dealing with a Gatling gun. You do not get an autocannon like some of the more advanced Mi helicopters. So we're going to have to face vehicles with the Kokon or the rocket pods versus infantry or lightly armored transports. It's not ideal, but if you have a flank that quickly needs an ATGM fix, this is the unit that can do it. I want to try and buff these things as best I can, so I'm going to take them at hardened. And the S-24 is an interesting helicopter. It is mostly a bit of a gadget, that's the way I consider it, but it's a useful one. You get this thing only for the S-24B rocket pods that are carried by it. They carry only 4 of those rockets, so don't be fooled by the rocket pods which seem to indicate that they're carrying 8 per pod. It's more like they're firing 1 pod per salvo. And those pods do a ton of damage. 10 HE will pretty much either wipe out infantry in 1 missile, or 1 rocket I should say, or it's going to heavily wound that infantry and stun vehicles. That stunning effect, that panicking effect, is what you want this unit for. It can be a useful addition to your deck, but don't build your entire deck around these things because they're not really worth it. Let's move on to air, and this is where you're going to find that this deck has some serious issues. The best air superiority fighter we can get is the MiG-23ML. This is not a good aircraft. It only has 10% ECM. It's relatively slow for an air superiority fighter at 900, where most travel at 1000. Missiles are going to be fired at semi-active type, so you're going to have to keep eyes on the target, which for a jet that only has 10% ECM is very bad news. And we only have a short range fire and forget Molnia. Combine that with a turn radius of 400 and you got a pretty bad dogfighter. But it's the only ASF jet that we get, and we're going to have to take it to make sure that we can at least intercept bombers with this deck. So let's take 3 of those. The Avia S-105, I have seen these things used. They're not effective. They fire rocket pods or rockets at a target. And these things will virtually always miss. The MiG-21 MF-75, again, this is a terribly outdated fighter, carrying only a couple of short-range fire-and-forget infrared missiles. Accuracy is only 40%, so just steer clear of these jets. Anti-tank, this is the only one we're getting, but you don't only get an anti-tank. This is a ground attack aircraft. It can get anti-tank kills or tank kills with quite good accuracy and a very high armor penetration, but you also get those 240mm rockets that we also saw on the helicopters, the Mi-24s. That makes this thing actually viable and valuable, because if you're dealing with larger groups of vehicles or infantry, fly over with an SU-25K, provided there's no AA nearby of course, dump a couple of these rocket pods on their head and you're going to see them either disappear right away or you're going to see them retreat. I'm going to take 3 of those at rookie. Keep in mind they only have 10% ECM, so the moment that anything with a AA missile is going to fire at this thing, it's likely to hit. And while this is one of those rare planes that has a bit of armor, it is not going to survive more than 2 hits. Especially if something with a 9 HE value like a Patriot is firing at you. Bomber wise, I want something that's that can support my armor. So I need something that is anti-infantry or anti-everything. And the Su-22 M4 can do that job okay-ish. It's a bomber with 2 high-end bombs, 1000 kilograms, which gives you 20 HE value. Very good if you want to stun some infantry before you're going to engage with, say, IFVs with autocannons and supporting tanks. So I'm going to take 3 of those because they are a very nice addition to my deck. And we can go for a multi-roll, which is what I'm going to do, but unfortunately we got no seeds to protect the rest of this aircraft deck. The aircraft that I want to get is this one. It's the MiG-29-912A. This one is a multi-role aircraft that actually has pretty damn impressive AA missiles in the form of those R-73As. Good accuracy, decent range, decent HE value, although don't expect these things to make kills with 1 missile unless you're dealing with a weakened target. But this is what you're getting those for, the HE bombs. And if you overlook this thing quickly, you're going to see, oh well, 12 HE, 500 kilogram bomb carries 4, it's a bomber. It's not your average bomber. This thing drops bombs that first deliver 12 HE damage and then explode into napalm. So you're going to be facing with fires, or if you're dealing with infantry that's heavily entrenched in a building, either come by with an M22 or with a 22 M4 to shock them out of the building, or burn them out of the building with a MiG-29. Now that leaves me with a couple points. The question is, where would you like to spend those? And that's a question for you guys, so let me know in the comments where you would like to dedicate these points. Personally, I'm not going to spend them, because I probably won't be playing this deck anyway. I'm building this deck for you guys so you can copy the deck code and fill in the rest of the points as you see fit. You can either go with another support vehicle, and you can get, for example, a Pivonka, which is a nice artillery unit, but you may want to consider bringing a FOB instead of 2 transport helos. You could go with another vehicle and get another tank in. You could go with a combination of, let's say, another helicopter, or any of these variations. So let me know what you're going to do with this deck. I'm going to put this deck in the link, deck description as is, or in the video description as is, and I'll leave it up to you guys to fill it up. Again, I won't be playing this deck. I'm not even going to save it. Okay, I will save it to get the deck code, but other than that, I won't be using it. If you do, and you have a great game with it, be sure to send it. Link to sending me games is in the description down below. Make a special note that this is the Czech Armor deck that I already showcased, with your own additions of course, and I'll be happy to feature it on the channel. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please hit like, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.